Alright, here we are with game number 2 on series this time. Still Cat and Gameslayer, still Blues and Game Wizard. A lot of more high prices this time. Oh dear. Okay, so Discord is still having issues. One thing to note, both electronics and chemicals are high, chemical colony especially, so carbon will be important. A lot of the better carbon is right in that patch. The rest of the carbon is still usable, scattered lows across them. This is unfortunate. So there are no scavengers available, so that's definitely not an option there. Nomad makes some amount of sense, not with the electronics price though, so that's going to really push you towards maybe a scientist. This could work. Cat going
pushing for Nomad.
Anyway.
You can usually get what you need for the 20.
Yeah, it definitely helps that Silicon starts high.
Yeah.
And Cat should be able to just barely get there.
He's got it.
This was a scientific found I was looking at before. I'm not sure if it's good. It'll have some difficulty getting to the water before teleportation, but having nice access to iron and carbon, aluminum not too far off either.
It's a chem colony, so it's a forward-thinking position.
Yes.
The only problem is chems consume fuel and fuel consumes water.
Luckily, fuel starts at regular price, but there still is the danger that power starts double. You need to find a way into power reasonably soon, and that all just delays everything else. And eventually, maybe your initial adjacent carbon isn't really doing all that much for you.
Cat looking for some carbon of her own, going into electronics, which makes sense. Looks like it's going to be a line of electronics of some kind, eventually.
Definitely a bit easier for the Nomad to get into electronics, already having 2 of the resources being gathered, and since neither of those are going to be making much money, this is just an easy way to convert them to upgrade.
I might have liked to have seen them on the aluminum, just on the grounds of you're going to have your aluminum ate away by the electronics production anyway. You may as well have it so you can transition those tiles, even if it's a little bit easier to attack with black market.
Yeah, I think something DT would do a lot is just place those 2 tiles down as metal mines right away. Get those pulling in the aluminum, eventually transition them into electronics. This ends up working much the same way, buying the claim, placing that down, but is definitely a bit slower, and it leaves you unable to do things like freeze these chemicals that Gameslayer is putting down. Not that you necessarily want to if you're going to buy up that much fuel.
Cat, trying to make money on the margins there. Everything you do in off-world will affect the prices of the map in some way, and making chems requires fuel. And so if you buy up the price of that, you make it a little less profitable for them, and you also can make a little bit of money yourself, but probably not as much money if you aren't already the dominant market force on the map.
Right. Cat definitely doing a very good job of paying attention as usual, noticing Gameslayer did not claim any aluminum this game, buying up a lot of that herself.
But also all of her buildings are shut down. So
that's not great, but they won't be shut down too much longer.
Maybe a transition into solar panels on the silicon.
Maybe. I don't think that's strictly necessary. In fact, she's actually going to put down more silicon. She should be very close to the upgrade already. And once she gets there, then she can convert that directly into solar panels then. And sell out a little carbon if necessary, but not sure why she's buying into carbon. Perhaps she doesn't realize that Gameslayer doesn't need the carbon for these chems, or something?
Anticipating electrolysis coming down, perhaps?
Perhaps, yeah, that would make some amount of sense.
I think it is.
Yeah. But they also only cost, what, 10 carbon apiece? It feels like a bit...
playing the margins.
Very thin margin there. Interesting that Cat decides to go solar panels at the end over here. A little more vulnerable to freezes. I guess it leverages that extra claim she put down there. But there's definitely room to put them at the top of that base instead.
I was about to say, I see some amount of the thinking, which is someday we could just go crazy into Silicon, and when the off-world game happens, that'll be a good thing, but you gotta have the goon. With the goon available right where I'm highlighting, not that you can see it, blues, but it would have blocked anything at the tip edge or anything at the close side of the HQ, because you can't pass black market through a goon. You can either trip the goon or the black market will bounce. So
right.
That's really what Kat needed to have done. I'm sure she didn't have the money, but...
Right. Either way, I think it ends up fine for her. She definitely had enough silicon, enough money to get more solar panels down at her other HQ. She's going to be getting a lot off of this high power price. Meanwhile, Gameslayer's still kind of just stuck where he is. I'm not sure what his plan for power is, and he's just going to slowly keep dying.
There's his plan right there.
It is a plan, but what it also means is that it keeps the power price higher for longer. As long as Gameslayer is not producing power, it's just going to mean he's going to pile up more and more and more debt. And since Kat already has the power down, she's going to be the one that gets the advantage off of that.
So let's talk about steel for a second. Steel consumes a lot of power and doesn't necessarily make a lot of steel, though you make up for this with adjacency. So right now, Gameslayer is consuming 0.9 power just in this steel alone, and the price of steel, while it has gone up since Gameslayer upgraded, was down to about $40 a unit, and we had hit the point where he was officially losing out significantly to run those buildings.
Yeah, in a lot of ways it was kind of necessary just to get him to the upgrade, and for him to be able to build the nuclear plants, which he's clearly planning for with this uranium mine. But it's all just going to be really, really late.
He's got 4 seconds, he better buy a goon.
Yeah, he has a few thousand before he hits D. And yeah, you might want to replace these chems, which are officially really terrible.
Yeah, the water problem that we mentioned earlier. Getting into more electrolysis, I'm assuming, though it might be farms.
They are farms. Farms are good. They won't contribute to his debt problem nearly as much, and
yeah,
it's a good market.
So the problem with this is ideally you would want your farms and your electrolysis to not be in EMP area. Now EMPs are getting really expensive, but it's still probably worthwhile with the amount of money that is being generated here.
Right. Well, one thing that can be said about all this, despite Gameslayer being in such massive amounts of debt, and yeah, he is an HQ level ahead. He does have a lot more money to work with than Kat does. Kat still has not quite gotten to the point where she can make power money. Very
E+1 on Ceres, though. Ceres has very short days, which means interest ticks much quicker.
Yes, they compounds to quite a large extent.
Nobody's buying claims.
Yeah, that does help mitigate things a little bit. It means that he's not completely just without options on the black market. He's building slowly, but he definitely needs to deal with that before long. Right, Kat
picked up a claim. A little more water production.
Yeah, that should be great. More farms will make so much money. Kat is not really going to make much power money now. She's going to have some problems still. I'm wondering why she hasn't actually upgraded yet. She probably gets pretty close with sellout on
Kat
carbon.
is chasing a dream that is, quite frankly, not manageable without patents on Ceres, and that is profit from power generation on Ceres with only solar panels. And the thing is, if you don't have the patent liquid batteries, which I think keeps your solar panels on 24 hours a day, yeah, it does, you can't really make that, because Ceres has nights that come very, very quickly. You have very short days within which your window to make power solar panels exists. Kind of a cruel joke. So she's sitting here with 5.9 thousand in debt, so she's paying as hard as she can with power money, 200 a second, but it just doesn't matter because every time it becomes night, she starts spending on her power bill again, and here we are. So she's not made the money to upgrade, is the long short answer.
It's definitely been a huge problem that life support prices have stuck so high, definitely preventing any sort of progress from power.
If the solar panels had been to the north, she could transition them into solar condensers and get water.
Maybe? I'm not sure those are on ice. It's hard to tell.
They are. They are. That line where the silicon is
Looks like it's adjacent to ice, but not on ice itself.
You press Z, it'll highlight in blue.
Right. But if you actually select the tiles, they don't say they have ice in them. Unlike the tiles right off to the side. Anyway, so now...
There's plenty of ice around, and it could have been there.
Yes, that's definitely true. So Kat now can no longer upgrade, she has to worry about this majority buyout. Meanwhile, Gameslayer doing what he can, realizing he maybe is gonna have trouble digging out of his debt hole, just gonna try to hack his way to victory here. He might have some trouble with that, but Kat is also just not in a position to make money, so I'm not sure. Okay. Is Gameslayer selling out to buy into the hack? Yes. Okay. Not planning on changing tactics here.
So, a standard 1v1 tactic is to buy up a chunk of your own stock before going for a buy, so that it'll accrue in value and you'll get a little bit of extra money in your pocket for that last bit of stock. And you're in as much debt as Gameslayer.
400,000.
He can't do that anymore. He is going to probably just win the game.
I don't think he's gonna win this one, actually, just looking at the stock price.
If he would spend his money and Kat hadn't upgraded, Kat might have been able to defend herself there and push this long enough for it to matter, but...
Right, at this point, Kat should be able to push into water, get into all these lucrative life support markets, and she just... Oh.
She's not going to, though.
Okay.
Yeah, no, she needed to not upgrade, she needed that last bit of stock.
Right, not quite enough time, especially the solar condensers coming down right around nighttime.
We get a rubber match!
Definitely felt like something that Kat should have been able to avoid the majority by. And
She had the money. She had the money to buy the stock, but she pushed for the upgrade. I don't know what she was thinking, because she could see he had $187,000, just even if he is $450,000 in debt. Jesus Christ.
Part of me wonders if Gameslayer delayed the power so much, kind of as a reaction to game number 1. Knowing he didn't have the uranium secured, maybe he was nervous about pushing to nuclear before then, and that really caused a lot of problems for him.
Founding as a nomad was a risk to begin with, honestly, with $200 electronics. It held Kat up a lot. She never really got ahead of it. She just eventually put it down to electronics factories and just, you know,
yeah, personally, I was not a fan of the electronics factories. They just don't do very much for a long time in the game. It was an easy way to keep going, but just combined with everything else, it just kind of stalled her out, dragged the game to a state where the power was not going to be able to be dealt with because of rising life support, and she just kind of stalled out, and Gameslayer managed to scrape this one out.
Kat realizing that Ceres is not necessarily well designed when it comes to solar power generation, and it's like, yeah, no, you can actually sit down and like prepare yourself financially, like this is what we're gonna do, we'll have all the silicon in the world and still not make the money you need, because nuclear plants are just that much better.
Yeah,
they're not the end all anymore, but
I mean, I've had games on series where I've gone solar panels and it's worked out just fine. It can be fine, but there are definitely a lot of conditions that have to be right for that.
Yeah.
Like, once you start getting frozen, once things start dragging on, then it just doesn't end up being enough.